Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Remarkable Edge live show where bold execution meets brilliant breakthroughs. You are entering the space where elite professionals and high performing organizations elevate their leadership, amplify their authority, and dominate their industries. I'm your host, Dr. V, the Brilliant Solutionist. I work with thought leaders, industry titans, corporate executives, and trailblazing intra and entrepreneurs to bridge the gap between expertise and influence, turning high level vision into impact execution. Around here, I don't just develop leaders, I position them as a definitive authority in their industry. And unlike traditional leadership programs and theoretical strategies, I deliver real-world, results-driven solutions that establish you as the authority in your field, optimize decision making, and create lasting market dominance. Why? Because authority isn't given, it is claimed. So if your organization is ready to build high performing leaders who dominate their industries, let's make it happen. So, welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Edge Live Series show where we challenge conventional thinking and help high level leaders position themselves as the authority in their space. So, what is today's topic? We're talking about, is networking dead? Or is it still happening? But it's really about the traditional version. You know, that awkward version, going to networking events for small talk, cold DMs. Now, that is a little spin on cold DMs. So sometimes you do have to reach out, but not in the way like, hey, buy my stuff. Right? And then aimless relationships that never really go anywhere. If you feel me, let me know. And then one thing I do want to add is like conferences. I haven't been to a conference in a while, but I used to go to them all the time, whether I was presenting or just showing. Most times I was presenting or speaking, but then it was like, well, what do I do after that? We go mingle, and then nothing really comes from that. So I learned that I was doing the traditional route before I realized it was dead, and I was like, no more am I ever going to do that again. So let me know if you are still stuck in that traditional cycle of networking. So we're going to talk about what is actually working now. And we're going to dive into that topic and really talk about how to build your influence that attracts those opportunities, the credibility, and the high level connections that actually drive results. So there's no point of having the stack of cards or the stack of, numbers, the Rolodex in your phone or, in your spreadsheets if you don't know how to get results from them. So this isn't about using people. This is not about seeing everything that you can get from people, because remember, you have value as well. But then if we're going to come in this connecting space, then something has to result from it. And it may not be tomorrow. It may not be next month. It could be within years, but still, I believe, we all come across each other for some kind of reason. And so we're going to make sure that we're being strategic and intentional about building those types of relationships. But before we get into it, I want to talk about a current event. Now, this happens probably like, I saw this about maybe 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, and it's about the Pepsi and Poppi acquisition and the power of strategic positioning. So if you haven't heard, the Pepsi, the juggernaut, beverage juggernaut, you know what I'm trying to say, they are possibly acquiring Poppi for $1.5 billion. That's B. And that's B with billion with the B. And now it seems like with the way things are going, billion is becoming like the new million. Now, not for me, but when you think about these large things, $1 million isn't a lot, quote, I'm doing air quotes. And so when you think about 1.5 billion, don't get me wrong, that is still massive. But you see how it just kind of roll out. Yeah, we're going to buy this company for $1.5 billion. But okay. So the Poppi, if you haven't heard about it, it is a prebiotic soda. I drink some of them. I like them, kind of thing. And it was founded by Allison Ellsworth, who started a small business, but she leveraged influence and strategic partnerships instead of just relying on traditional sales. So what's interesting is that Pepsi isn't just buying another soda, right? Because there's a lot that's out there, but what made her stick out? I think it's a woman, but what made them stick out? But they were buying the influence. So Allison and Poppi were over there doing their thing, and then Pepsi noticed that it was the influence, and that's what they were interested in. So they were investing in the brand's community, visibility, and strategic positioning. So what can we learn from them, and how does this relate to right now you being a leader in the capacity of whether it's your business or your career? It is not about who you know. And then we hear that. I think that the phrase is it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. But that doesn't work anymore because it's really about who knows you and what do they associate with your name. I think that has been like the secret, where the secret sauce that people really haven't, shared. And I was on a call with some high level business people. It was a coaching call. Well, the coach was leading the call, but they brought in some different people, and they were saying that it's not that. Now, this was just for them. I can't speak for all of them, but they were saying the reason why they don't share like the top secrets or the ways on how to do things is because people don't listen and people won't execute and they don't want to waste their time trying to drag people up the hill. So a lot of people were stuck into, oh, it's not what I know, so they stopped learning skills and stopped being masters of their craft and focus on mastery. Then they start saying, well, let me just go build these relationships so I can just get in the room and people, I can, climb my way up the ladder, whatever. But the real thing is that the people needed to know you and what you bring to the table. Like we talked about in the previous episode, they needed to know the secret is who is calling you to the table, even if you don't have the same level of maybe like money or whatever that thing is. They can see something in you and they're inviting you. And that's the secret part. And that's similar to what the brand Poppi was doing. Like they weren't out there saying, hey, Pepsi, notice me. They were doing their thing and building up, like I said, the community, the visibility, the credibility, and all of that. They had a story to go with it. And then it got Pepsi's attention. Now, I'm not going to say they weren't. I don't know the full story. Were they sliding in Pepsi DMs and things like that? I don't know. But some way, somehow, they got the attention. But it wasn't so much about you need me. Pepsi was like, oh, we're going to go get that. So let me know if you can understand the distinction about that. So it is really about who knows you and what do they associate with your name. So oftentimes leaders go to networking events collecting names or collecting LinkedIn profiles and things like that, sending out cold messages. But we have to understand that influence is the real currency and it's really about relationship building. And that's where people go wrong. And I've gone wrong with that. It's like, yeah, I'll get all these people's names or I've made all these contacts, had a great time with people, but then it dies down after that. And then when it's time for you to do something, you reach back out to them, then it's like either they moved on, they don't know who you are, all of that. So it's really about relationship building, but not so much relationship building into, oh, I have to get something from them. It's authentic relationship. Like you're genuinely interested in what the person has to offer or what they're doing, and they're genuinely interested in you. And then if some type of collaboration come about, okay, great. And if it doesn't come about with them, they may know someone, but I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. So why doesn't traditional networking no longer works? It's because people aren't actually networking. They are begging. And I'll put it like, you know that feeling. It's not like, excuse me, oh, please work with me. It's a form of, hey, this is what I do, and I'm only telling you what I do, or I'm only talking to you because I want you to come and either buy something from me, work, do a deal with me, all of those things. And it puts you in this lower state, right? And it's like you're collecting all of this stuff and you're hoping for a response. Like, okay, I'm going to send this out and I hope somebody says something and then we can make it happen like that. But then that means you're really chasing opportunities instead of attracting them. Now, don't get me wrong. There are instances where you do go after, you go for yours, right? There are times where you do have to send out things so people can notice you, but it's still a way that you still stand in your power and stand in your authority without saying, oh, hey, I'm just reaching out to you so you can hopefully like kind of look at my stuff. It's like, no, I'm reaching out to you because I know that I have something that you need. So that's a different energy when I say that, uh, but chasing versus attracting, because let me be clear, sometimes you do have to go out, but for the most part, the thing that you can control is how you show up, what people associate with you, your personal brand. And I know that's a buzzword, but it's really about what you stand for, your values, and your position, like how you are, your authority, your influence, what you want to be known for, what you're going to be good at, and what you're committed to putting out into this world. All right. So people, you want to build that because then you build that aura around you, and then people can start being attracted to you. And so this is really about influence and credibility and how you drive decisions to get those conversations to start happening in the first place. So what I'm realizing and what I've seen in this space is that a lot of leaders, and when I say leader, it doesn't necessarily mean just the title. You know, if you are driving some sort of vision at whatever scale, you are a leader. And if you have people listening to you, I don't care if it's two people, you have a level of influence or you are a leader. But what's happening is, and a lot of people go out, a lot of leaders, high level people go out, and they're just not really interested in the low vibes, the low level connections that don't move the needle anywhere. So instead of them, shifting, the like, you know what, let me work on, my positioning, let me work on, my visibility and credibility and my craft. It's like, you know what, I don't want to do any of this at all. And we don't want that. We still want to go out and talk with people, but it's now how we're doing that and genuinely interested in knowing more about the people, right, that we are talking to, and not just collecting and having low level conversations and nothing ever happens. There are a lot of people out there that write books on that, how to win friends with influence, all of that. And sometimes it's like, you may gear that towards marketing and sales and all of that, but we all need that, because especially if you want to be a thought leader and you are, out here wanting to be an industry titan, mogul, grow your business, grow your career, or grow, any area of your life, is going to take you. It's going to take being influential and winning people over, because you're selling something. It may not be a physical product, it may not be a service, but you're selling a vision. And you want people to buy into the vision and the movement that you care about, that's part of your branding. So I don't care what people say. That is like, if you're not learning, from different industries, about, influence, and if you're only focusing on what influence says about, leadership, or in corporate or in your career, then you're doing yourself a disservice, right? All right, so I'm getting off topic. So you want to understand, like, with Pepsi and Poppi, it only became publicized when it was close to making the deal. But that happened probably years. It probably was like maybe 2 to 3 years in the making. I'm not sure how long those deals happen, but they happen over time, right, behind the scenes. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, is like, no one just, said, hey, called up Alpha on the phone, like, hey, let's do this. Of course there were negotiations, there were relationship building. They probably had been watching Allison and the Poppi brand. The same thing with you. And so if you're wondering, like, how are people popping up with these big deals, these big contracts and things like that, it's a saying. It's something too when they say deals are made on the golf course. Things behind the scenes, people are building relationships, people are having authentic connections. And when I say authentic, like, I really want to know, just like, about you as a person. Forget what position you're in, forget what title that you have, but who are you? What are you really about when you strip away all of that? And that's what it means about building those relationships. And then that's where the influence comes in. And that's when all those things start coming together, instead of going straight to, hey, I want you to buy this, or I want, to want to work with you, or I want you to work with me, this, that, and the other. So if you're not focusing on let me see, one, two, big four, no, big three, and then they say that you are invisible. So if no one can associate value with your name, credibility with your name, or authority with your name, you are invisible. And sometimes that can be like, oh man, like, I've been doing all of this work, and when it's time for me to go to another level, then it's like I can't, or I'm stuck. And this all goes to you as a leader. Like I said, whether it's in your career space, whether it's in your professional setting, whether it's in your actual business, whatever level you are, hopefully you still want to elevate. And if you're finding yourself bumping up a glass ceiling, and it's not so much like people are holding you back, the things that you can work on is the value you provide, your credibility and your authority, so that you can start being more visible. And people say, well, how do I become more visible? You can start with doing those things right there. And so shifting network is not really about being seen. It's about being known for something valuable before the conversation is being started. And that is something that a lot of us could really work on, especially if you are in a position where you want to, drive, things forward. You want to create solutions for different problems. You want to get a team. You know all the things that you want to do to get the results. It's not about just you showing up, especially going to these events. Like, you know, you come out there, do a little song and dance. Even if you're presenting, even if you were the keynote speaker, it's not really about you being seen anymore. People want to know is like, okay, what value do you have before we even start? So that's why you start putting things out there, whether it's a video, whether it's articles, whether it is blog posts, whatever it is, people can go out there and see those things for themselves, and then that's where those true conversations start happening. So let's get into some steps. The how can you be the most attractive person in the room, or have the most valuable voice in the room without always being the loudest, or without always being quote unquote seen? So step one is own your distinctive position. How do you be the category of one? Now, I didn't come up with that phrase. I think I got that from Kelly Roche. How to be the category of one. I love that. Like, how can you do that? How can you be distinctive in your industry, your field, and your position? How can you do that? So the example of Poppi, going back to our current event, they weren't just another soda brand. They were a prebiotic soda that disrupted gut health in the beverage industry. There weren't a lot of people doing that, you know. So you had, I think, you know, kombucha, you know, the fermented tea with good probiotics, and then you had soda. They were like, hey, can we combine them? And then they stood out, and then other brands started rolling around. But I believe they were like one of the first. So then you have to ask yourself, what is your category of one? What makes you unquestionably different and valuable? And that is something that you work on. That is something that you sit with. And then once you discover it, you own it. And can it evolve over time? Yes, but you have to pick something and then go for it and make that stance. So your authority should be undeniable before anyone ever speaks to you. And that is something that you can work on and build up towards. Number two is build digital authority and leverage asynchronous influence. So the mistake people make is they only show up in real time. So like either going to an event, or only going to a conference, or going to a meetup, and then that's it. But you have to understand that in this day and age, in the advice economy, in the attention economy, your content, your reputation, your authority, they're all working for you 24/7. So you got to have things out there swirling around in the cyberspace, you know, like I said, where there's articles that you're writing, and, you know, in the professional space. And I hope you know this, and I may need to do something on this at another time. In the professional space, if you're not writing for your organizations, the national organizations, those journals and things like that, if you're not, or going to those conferences and making a name for yourself, then you're doing yourself a disservice. I started that even when I was a K-12 teacher. I would go to those conferences and I was like, oh wow, how can those people, like, my brain started going, I'm like, how are these people like being on the stage, or they have these breakout sessions, and then when we would get the programs, they would give us in a journal, and I would see these names like, how are they doing that? And then when I got into my doc program, I learned like, oh, that is what you do. You know, there's some, you yourself as a quote unquote regular person can do those things too. So I started doing that in my professional space, and I was like, oh, why didn't I transfer that into entrepreneur land? So I'm not saying that you have to be in a different space, or it's only for quote unquote influencers or entrepreneurs, or the people are in the social media space, you know, who are just doing videos on YouTube, writing, you know, their own blog posts. In the professional space and in the corporate space, you have those things where you can build that credibility and have that content in that vein working for you. So you can do both. But I think people are doing one or the other, and you can do both, and that makes you more visible, valuable, credible, and all of those things. So, like I said, you can do your podcast, you can do your articles, and then make sure that you're doing it with strategic partners. Another step is to make sure that you do relationship building over random reach outs. Now, I used to do that. I was like, well, I guess I need to just reach out to people and just get as many people to notice me as I can. But then I heard someone say that they work with social media influencers who had like millions of followers, but then nothing ever came from that. You know, like, so much they watched the videos, but when it was time for them to offer a service or sell some merchandise, you know, they didn't have anybody to get sales because it was just a bunch of random people just looking at their stuff, but not the type of people that they wanted to work with. So yes, there you will have sometimes you do reach out cold, but it's like a strategic cold, right? And it's about relationship driven influence instead of just spamming a bunch of people. And so I know we've seen that, especially if you're on LinkedIn, it's a bunch of spams, happening. And it's like, do you even know who I am? Did you even go look at a post or anything? Did you even say hello? Kind of thing. So I don't want you to say, well, I can't start off, building a relationship with someone because I need to go see them in person or they don't know me or things like that. And I don't want to come off cold. Sometimes you do, but it's how you come out, reaching out to someone cold versus just throwing something at them and say, here's my service and this is what I do now. Reach back out to me. That is not relationship building. So you don't want to have random reach outs. You want to be strategic and have relational reach outs. So what is the takeaway? So some takeaways from this is yes, traditional networking is dead, but influence and relationships is the real currency. And I don't care what level you're in your business or what level you're in your career, this is where you're going to start growing and expanding because your work effort is no longer enough. And I did that in a previous episode where it's no longer enough for you to just continue to keep working hard and cranking out stuff. We all need people, but now we need to be strategic with the people that we interact with. And you can start by looking at who you're following or who's following you. Like, do you know these people? And I'm not saying know them like tell all your business kind of things or you're hanging out, every weekend or things like that. But there's a way to start getting to know people and building relationships online. And then position yourself as being in a distinctive category of yourself to where decision makers are seeking you out. And even if you are the decision maker, think about what is your next level, for a strategic partner or your next level of growth and expansion. Who needs to seek you, who needs to come to you for your next level? Maybe it could be selling a company, maybe it could be you acquiring another type of company. So there are always levels to this, so don't get comfortable and complacent where you are. The next takeaway is to make sure you build that 24/7 ecosystem of your content and your credibility and your value that's going out there to work for you 24/7, whether there's multiple platforms, whether there are multiple mediums, professional space. Please tap into that. And if you have questions about that, comment the word influence down below because there's so much that you can do that's not just, for these quote unquote social media streets. There is a professional side of doing that. And then make sure that you shift from just throwing things at people and actually let conversations happen naturally. Sometimes people will respond and sometimes they won't. Oh well, there's what, 8 billion people on the planet. So you don't need a lot to make things happen for you, and don't get caught up in that. And it's not about, oh gosh, people don't like me, they don't want to be my friend. There are a lot of people that are skeptical out here nowadays. Like, we're in a trust recession. So it's kind of like anytime somebody messages you, you're going to side eye them. But it's like when you're coming from a genuine space and place, I believe people will feel that. And then if they don't respond, just know it has nothing to do with you. But if it is a partnership and a relationship that you want to develop, then reach back out to them again, because you know what? People are busy. Sometimes people don't see it. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times, but you have to say, like, is this relationship worth it to me? If it is, keep going at it until they actually tell you no. And if it's not, then okay, right? So bottom line is, stop networking like, you're just out here begging and hoping someone notice you and like you, and start building influence like a leader. And again, even if you're not in the quote unquote traditional position as a leader, you are still a leader because the first person you lead is yourself. So you start with yourself. And then this is not just for your career. It's not just for your company, but this is in multiple areas of your life. So you start showing up as a leader in one area, then you start doing that in multiple areas, and that way you will always be able to lead your life. So if anything stuck out to you, let me know. If you have some thoughts and insights, comment those down below, and I would love to start a conversation with you. Drop the word influence down below, or you can message me. And then if you have any questions, I'll be sure to answer them. Or if you have any insights that you want to share, I would love to hear them so that we can turn this monologue into a dialogue. And thank you so much for staying with me with this to the end of this episode, and I will see you next time where we will continue to redefine what it means to be an elite, affluent leader. And remember to stay bold, stay strategic, and always execute brilliantly. Until next time, bye.